All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Ryan Payton. I am the director of the Colorado Attorney Mentoring Program, and so glad you could be here for our February CLE event, LLPs in Practice, mainstreaming alternative legal service providers. I'm so excited to have this conversation today. We have a great panel and a great agenda, and so I'm hopeful that you will leave here with some really good information about this new program, new licensure in Colorado, how it works, and how you can interact with it. So before we get started, a few housekeeping things to cover. One, we are in webinar mode, which means that we cannot see you or hear you. That also means that we can't help you with tech issues. So if something occurs, I find the best thing to do is just exit Zoom and come back in. If something catastrophic happens on our end, we will restart the Zoom as quickly as we possibly can. But that means that your questions need to come to us through the chat function or the Q&A function. You should see those buttons at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please feel free to use either one. And please do this as early as possible in our session today, because we know you have questions about LLPs and we really want to get to those questions today. So please throw your questions in the chat or the Q&A as early and as often as you would like, and we will get them answered for you. This is a CLE accredited program. About 5 minutes before our end time today, I'll put the CLE number in the chat. If for any reason you miss it or can't take it with you before you go, feel free to send me an email when we're done here, and I'll be happy to send it to you that way, but look for it in the chat. And with that, I think we'll get going. I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves before we hop into the agenda, and we'll just kind of go around the screen. And Veronica, I'll start with you since you're next to me.
Ready? I'm Veronica Gonzalez. I'm an LLP here at Juniper Family Law. I was part of the first cohort, so I've been practicing for about 7 months, and it's going well. I'm very involved with the LLP community and the CBA, and so I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, Veronica. We're glad you're here. Ashley, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Ashley Adebar. I am currently an LLP at Wells Family Law in Denver. I'm actually finishing up practice here at a big law firm and will be starting my own solo practice on Monday. So I'll be sort of enjoying that new adventure. And I was also part of the first cohort of LLPs, so I've been practicing since June.
Very exciting. Congratulations. We'll have to have you back for a follow-up next year to see how the solo practice is going. Susan, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I'm Susan Harris, been in family law for well over 12 years. Also a part of the first cohort of LLPs since June. And I'm in Colorado Springs, currently at a family law firm, but similar to Ashley, I'm going out on my own effective March 1.
Congratulations to you as well, Susan. And Hannah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Schinniger. I'm a co-owner of the Jane Law Group. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. First cohort LLP here, along with Veronica and Ashley. We're excited to get this chat going.
Great. Well, thanks to you all for being here. I'm so glad to have this conversation. And let's jump right in. I know there are some folks who may be watching this who have no idea what an LLP is or what this program is that we're talking about. And so I was hoping we could just start with a general overview of what is the Colorado LLP program. And Veronica, I'm going to pick on you to start us off if you want to just tell us a little bit about what is an LLP and what does it mean?
Happy to start. So an LLP is a licensed legal paraprofessional. We all are licensed to practice law in a limited capacity. We have a few things that we can't do that a full licensed attorney can do, but we can represent our clients. We can help them get through their divorce case, allocation of parental responsibilities. We could do modification cases, name changes, gender identity assignment changes, things like that. So we're here to hopefully keep everything out of litigation, because one of our limitations is questioning witnesses. And so we want to keep it out of court, but we have been doing very well with that, going through mediation, settling our cases. So we're here to help. We all have lower rates than attorneys, so we're also more affordable, which is great for the public and for people who are looking for affordable representation.
Great. And there was so much in that that I kind of want to pick apart and focus in on. Family law is really the only area of practice where LLPs are focused right now. Why is that? Why was family law targeted as the place to start this new licensure? Ashley,
Well,
do
it's
you
my
want to? Oh,
understanding.
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Well, it's just my understanding that there's so many pro se parties out there, and the dockets are full of people who are pro se who don't know how to navigate the system, don't have the money to hire an attorney, and just need some more affordable representation.
And many of you were working in family law before you became LLPs. Is that correct?
Yes.
As Tell me more. As paralegals, what kind of roles were you serving in the family law space?
I was the senior supervising paralegal at my law firm. So I was practicing in family law for 10 years, working for the senior partner at this firm. And so just exclusively working in family law cases. So it was a really nice transition to go from, being a paralegal in this space to now being able to have the opportunity to give clients actual legal advice. As paralegals, we know the answers to a lot of these questions. Now we didn't always necessarily participate in strategy, but now that is actually what our role is to do the legal strategy. And so it was, part of our licensure requires experience in family law. And the first group of us really had quite an extensive background in family law.
And let's talk a little bit about that licensure process. And Susan, maybe you can jump in here. I mean, what was the process to go from paralegal work into becoming an LLP?
Yeah, so there are two tracks. One is, really both of them have experience requirements, but one is kind of categorized as the experience track, and then the other one, your education background. But again, both require a certain amount of paralegal experience and specifically family law in Colorado experience. We go through kind of a truncated version, I'd say, of what attorneys in Colorado have to go through. We still have to do the character and fitness, same as them. We're required to take an ethics course. And so we're held to those same standards. We have our own set of ethics rules, but they're very similar to the attorneys. And again, we're held to that same standard. And then we're required to take an all day kind of mini bar exam that, again, is specific to family law. And then we also have to take the professionalism course that new attorneys have to take. So very similar, but as the name suggests, it's limited. It's with a smaller scope than one attorney.
Mm-hmm. And Hannah, how was that process for you? I mean, was it a strange process to go through this licensure? Did it feel natural coming from the work that you were already doing? How did you just experience that process?
Well, I think a lot of us kind of followed this program from the very inception. So, gosh, guys, when was it? Like 2021, when like we kind of got this like random announcement, like, hey, LLPs might be a thing. We like through the PALS program with the Supreme Court. And I remember like having my LSAT book out and like reading the email, and I was like, oh, cool. Don't need that anymore. uh, and so, yeah, the application process was maybe a little daunting. And I don't want to say that to scare people away, but when you get this 23-page blank document and you are spilling your entire life's contents out on these pages, you're mortified you're going to miss something. And then you're scared you're not going to pass the character and fitness portion because you missed something. But yeah, take it one page at a time, read all of the words. I got an email, maybe before a week, I sat for my exam saying that I didn't submit my driving record. And I was like, where did it say I needed to submit this? So I'm like anxiously Googling how to find this record. And I was like, I have a speeding ticket. Is this going to keep me from taking the exam? Like all of these things. And of course, like the attorneys you work with are like, you're fine. It's fine. But as someone who, as I believe most of us paralegals don't have the resources to go to law school. And so anything where we're under this much scrutiny already feels like we could get in trouble, even though that's certainly not what this application is about. So yeah, it was a long process, and I am so glad that it's a little bit more streamlined for future cohorts. They know how they're grading the exam, which when we took our exam, we had no idea the grading rubric or how it was going to be graded or what a passing score was. So it's exciting to see history unfold in real time and us being kind of the trailblazers.
Yes, I mean, I think you all absolutely are the trailblazers. And I'm wondering, how did you navigate that transition from being in a paralegal role, which, I think Ashley said was sort of, more of that support position, moving into a position where you are representing clients, you are in the strategy. What It's one thing to be licensed and to get that passing test and to get that piece of paper, but then you actually have to mentally move into that space. And so how did you approach that shift in role in the work that you were doing? Anyone can just jump in.
I think that was an interesting transition. I think having attorneys by your side that can help you with that transition was really important for me. So the attorneys in my office were very supportive of me becoming an LLP and really encouraged me to pursue the path. And so once I was able to, take on clients, they had me co-counsel several cases with them so that I could, watch what they were doing, but also really participate in giving the legal advice, managing the day-to-day on the cases. And then we kind of talked through some strategy and some different types of things, but it was still a challenging transition. I mean, you're so used to, as a paralegal, really stopping yourself in your tracks when you're typing up an email, you're saying, the attorney told me to let you know this. And now you're saying, well, now I'm the person who's actually giving you this advice. So the attorneys encouraged me to remember that and to own that the clients were engaging me in my new capacity to give them legal advice. And so it does help to have some of that encouragement along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Good mentor is key for sure. I'm lucky to have had one of those as well. I'm the type of person just to jump in. So I started right away, but then you realize that, practicing law and being a paralegal are two different things. So I'm still learning things every day, and an encouraging mentor who you work with is key in your success, I believe. And if you don't have that, then a mentor that doesn't work with you, somebody that you can bounce ideas off or ask questions to, and, get some advice on what they think that you should do or how you should do it, or, what kinds of things to say, So sitting in with Louisa, who's my mentor, was perfect for me. It was great.
Yeah, to piggyback off of what everyone else has said, like Veronica, I am a jump right into the deep end kind of person. I remember during the day after we swore in, during our all-day LLP practicum, we all started getting our bar numbers. And so we were like listening to the content in our CLEs, but also like the whispers across the room were kind of growing, like, what's your number? Did you get your number? And I think that Monday, following that practicum, I had like notices of co-counsel filed in a ton of cases. Having a mentor, but also realizing, like, empowering yourself. We passed this exam. We have these licenses. We have been entrusted, and now it's okay to trust yourself to do what you know So this process was very validating. Passing the exam was very validating. We've known this information and we've known the answer to client emails for years. We just haven't been allowed to say that we know. So for me, that was very validating. And what empowered me to utilize my license and to start practicing.
Yeah, and I echo what Hannah just said of don't let the imposter syndrome get in your way. Something that has been kind of a unique benefit is the LLP community, we are so supportive of each other. And if you ever have that little bit of doubt creep in, you can be reaching out to any one of those colleagues. So far has been my experience of bouncing ideas off of them. And what's kind of cool is with everybody, not everybody has only been in family law. So there's a bunch of different approaches to it and how things can maybe intersect with other areas. And hey, you may want to think about this and go, talk to an attorney on it. But yeah, really trusting yourself, trusting your gut, and then using those resources when you need to, even if you just need a little bit of a boost in your confidence on that. And you just got to dig in. I mean, definitely just jump into the deep end and go for it. And at the end of the day, I'm often reminded by other colleagues of these folks are coming in needing help from you. They know less than you. So we're there to guide the clients. And I don't think I've ever had anyone respond negatively to, I'm not 100% sure on the answer. Let me look into it and get back to you. And as long as you follow through on that, every client I've had has been happy with that approach too. And that builds trust too, of they know then you're not just going to make up an answer because you're uncomfortable in the conversation. You will look into it and get them the proper answer.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk in a little bit about how law firms, can leverage LLPs in that regard and support LLPs and the work they're doing. But there's a great question from the audience that I want to pose to you all, which is, have you all felt limited in any ways with the license, or do you feel like it is balanced in what you can and cannot do? Thoughts?
I think one
think we
question
all
that
have an answer.
right. I think it's a kind of a good mix of both, being the guinea pigs. There's a lot of learning as we go. And so I know one topic that has come up down here is, can we be objecting to things in the courtroom? The rules are not necessarily black and white on that. And as I'm sure we all know, things can vary from one courtroom to the next within the same courthouse. So I like the scope of what I think is intended to be the goal. There's still some little quirks that need to be worked out like that. But I think that is to come. So I'm pretty happy with the balance so
Good.
far.
I feel like the rules definitely need clarification, and the Supreme Court committee is working on some clarifications for us, which is great. But that's what I feel is limited, is like, you don't know exactly what the intent of the rule was. And so everybody is interpreting it a little bit differently. So I'm looking forward to getting the clarification.
Yeah,
Any
there's
other-
definitely several areas that are going to require some clarification, with respect to expert issues and things like that. I think, it's clear to us that the Supreme Court had a very, they had an idea in mind of what the LLPs would do. But I think some of the language that we've run into in practice, it's one thing to sort of learn the rule and to be able to test on that rule, but it's another thing to actually apply that rule in real life. And so, we've definitely been giving feedback to that committee so they can get us some clarification. But I feel like we are able to do quite a bit with the scope of our license. There's just some areas where, we could get a little bit more information.
Sure. Do you want to add anything, Hannah?
At the mercy of my colleagues, I'm also going to mention some things that we talk about amongst ourselves is asking questions and examining witnesses in court. Like, that is one of a very clear rule of something that we cannot do. And a lot of us want to know the answer why behind it. And some courts will allow you to object, which feels much more evidentiary than asking questions, especially in uncontested divorce hearings. There's a lot of procedural questions that you have to ask in those, and we're not permitted to ask them. So in many ways, in uncontested hearings, we become an extra body in the room. And, of course, us being there to support our client and to answer any questions they have is always helpful, but it could streamline the process, even if just for that limited capacity of uncontested hearings.
Well, that brings up an interesting point, and we have another great question that I want to get to in a second from the audience. But before I do that, what you're talking about though leads me to wonder, how are judges sort of responding to you all being in court? Do you feel like they have an understanding of who you are and what you can do? And it sounds like though, depending on, you know, which courtroom you're in, it may look a little different. But generally, how do you feel like the court and the judges have responded to LLPs in practice?
They've been very receptive and very open to it. A lot of the clerks as well, like family court facilitators, when you're in the ISC, they're appreciative of having an LLP. They're like really excited for it. I haven't had any pushback from any judges. They've been all very helpful whenever, you know, when I was on there. I've only had one hearing and it went very, very well. So I think all of them are pretty receptive to it.
Great. All right, so this question I think is a really good one. How do you feel about the name chosen for LLPs, being called a licensed legal paraprofessional? How does it impact your work, explain your services, your competency to clients, pros and cons? How do you feel about the name, and do you think it's helpful in?
I'd like to start on that one.
Yeah,
So
go for
I
it.
don't licensed legal paraprofessional is a mouthful. It's like a tongue twister. I
Mhm.
do not like the name at all. And the way that I explain it to people is we are law practitioners. I always tell people I'm a family law practitioner before I tell them LLP or licensed legal paraprofessional, because that explains what we are a lot better than that. Hoping that maybe one day they'll be receptive to name change, maybe some sort of like a law practitioner, legal practitioner, something that's not so much of a mouthful, or paraprofessional, because everybody's like, is that just a paralegal? And I'm like, no, we're actually licensed to practice law. I was a paralegal, I still do paralegal work, but there's a lot more to it. So it takes a lot more explanation. So I usually say I'm a family law practitioner, and that gets across to whoever I'm speaking to better than licensed legal paraprofessional.
Yeah, I agree. And titling your business. So part of our rules require that if you're a solo practitioner, you actually have to have that entire title in the name of your business, which is a mouthful. And when I just set up my business, I learned how challenging that is to even fit that on a page for a logo or anything else. It's a super long name. And then, you know, setting up business bank accounts, when I said I'm a licensed legal paraprofessional, the first question I got was, so you do paralegal work? Because that name is just so synonymous. They're just so similar sounding. And so I've run into that, just like Veronica, so often, where people, it's very hard when you meet people out, you know, in the wild, and you're trying to explain what you do, to explain that you have a license to practice law, that you're not an assistant to an attorney, that you're a completely independent entity who can give legal advice without any required supervision of an attorney. So that name does sort of create, I think, some challenges for us in advertising ourselves to the public.
Well, and there's the very large issue of, you know, limited liability partnership. That also stands for LLP. And so, in a lot of my court pleadings, it's first name, last name, LLP, 6-digit bar number.
Mhm.
And I have frequently come across, oh, you're an LLP? I didn't get that. I thought it was a typo in your bar number. And it's like, it's right there on the page. It says LLP. I don't know how to make this more clear other than typing out the entire alphabet. Uh, also, I know that it also raises the issue of, what are we going to be called if this license gets expanded to other areas of law? Is each different? Are we all going to be LLPs, or is each area of law going to have a different title? So yeah, I also understand that a name change in the future or is in the works with the Supreme Court as well. And that's something us LLPs are, I believe, hopeful for.
It's very technical. I think you can tell that legal minds created it. But yeah, being out in the wild, as Ashley said, I think it'd be nice to have something that's, I mean, the mission of the license is to give more access to the public, right? So I think a more public friendly title would also work toward that mission.
Has your cohort been spitballing any names? Like if you could wave a magic wand, this is what you would want to be called?
Well, if we've gotten, I don't know if we've had like a general consensus yet. I think we all agree anything other than the acronym LLP would be a good start.
Fair enough,
A
fair enough.
practitioner, I mean, something with a practitioner would
Mhm.
be better than paraprofessional, because that sounds like we're assisting as a paraprofessional. So I'd like to say practitioner somewhere, somehow.
Sure. Another question in the chat, what was it like preparing for the exam? Was there a prep system leading up to it, study materials in Colorado or coursework or anything that you took advantage of?
Well, we were the first cohort, all of us here, so we had no idea what we were doing. We had no idea what to study. They did have an ethics class for us, so that was great. I mean, that helped us, study for the ethics and then take it from there and study for the family law portion. But we're like, do we study every single statute? Do we have to memorize every single statute and what it says? Do we do this? Do we do that? So I just studied for months about everything I could. Talked to attorneys, asked them about their bar exam. They would give a little bit of pointers. And I mean, I think we over prepped. And they also offered us an advanced family law course that some of us took advantage of, some of us didn't, but it also helped. I mean, my background wasn't just family law. I've been a paralegal for 26 years in different types of law. So that advanced family law class really, really helped a lot too. So I think that, and we got together, we had study groups with different people who were doing it, and we'd bounce ideas off of each other. I think that helped the most too, just because they're like, well, I'm studying this. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should study that too, or I'm studying this. And it was just, it was a learning experience. We had no materials or anything to go off of because we were the first ones. So, I mean, it was definitely a learning experience. I'm sure that they've come up with some more things now for the next people that come through. I know that I knew a couple people in the second cohort that would call and ask me what I studied or what I think they should study. And I think that all of us LLPs who are already licensed are a good resource for people who are beginning their studies.
Yeah, it was
So
a little all over the place. You could study anything and everything. We all just assumed we had to know everything about everything. I actually read the entire bench bar book as a prep, thinking that that would be helpful. It's really, really long. And that was really helpful to me for a lot of reasons. But I think there was a little bit of practice material they gave us and sort of like a roadmap, but the roadmap was everything. It felt like you had to know everything and all these, Chief Justice directives and all these case law and all these different things. And so it wasn't so clear to us kind of what that test would look like. And like Hannah said before, I mean, we didn't even know what the passing score was for this exam. We had no idea, where the line would be drawn in terms of how many people would pass or what it would be on the exam. So that was definitely interesting. But yeah, as the cohorts have moved forward, I think they'll be getting more material, hopefully in more practice groups. And all of us LLPs that have already done this are happy to help as well.
And there's a follow-up question as well, if anyone's comfortable sharing, kind of how much would you estimate you spent to prepare? And was that worth it? Do you feel like that was the right amount of money, too much, too little?
I mean, some of the firms paid for the LLPs who are doing it. My firm did not. So, including the application, I think I spent a good 2,500, and I absolutely think it was worth it. I would do it again, to get this licensure because I'm so excited about it. I love it. I like doing what I do. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't think 2,500 is bad at all. But if you work for a firm that's very supportive of LLPs, I think that they're more willing to pay. And now that they know what LLPs are doing and that they want them in their firms, they're even more willing to, help cover some of the costs. I think I got the practicum paid for, but that's because I moved to my new firm and, they paid for it here. So, but yeah, and then in Rampa, they were given some scholarships as well to people who were trying to apply for the LLP.
And can you, for folks who don't know what that is, what Rampa is?
RAMPA is the Rocky Mountain Paralegal Association.
Yeah, there wasn't like a prep class. So my firm did pay for my entire program as well. And I would say that's probably about what that cost was. But it's not like the bar, right? There's no like bar prep classes or anything you're going to be investing money into for the LLP program, at least not yet. And so the cost really is related to, the application, any of the background sort of information you need to gather. I actually spent a lot of money on like office supplies. I will say I came up with like 15 different strategies of how I would study for this exam. So there was like, flashcards and boxes to hold flashcards. And there were giant pieces of paper and whiteboards and multicolored markers and drawing mind maps and all kinds of things. So it really was just a matter of spending the money on like printing things out and studying everything.
So one of the reasons why the LLP program was developed was in an effort to provide a more cost-effective solution for legal consumers. And so I'm curious how you all feel like you're doing that. There's a question from the audience about how you determine your pricing. I think that it's all sort of interrelated, but do you feel like at this point, LLPs are providing a more cost-effective solution, and how is that happening? And I guess, you can talk a little bit about what are you pricing at and how are you determining your pricing?
We looked at it, I guess kind of the easiest like starting point for us was more than a paralegal, less than an attorney. And I know in my LLP circles, we're pretty open about what each of us are charging. I do think that has helped. Something over my career I've noticed when doing attorney's fees affidavit is the paralegals are putting in, at least in the firms I've worked in with us, both firms have used paralegals to their largest capacity, case managers and everything. But typically the paralegals are spending more hours on a file than an attorney. And so then if all of those hours or almost all of those hours are done by an LLP, that is saving some money. And I think I've heard different approaches from folks in firms of some LLPs are parsing out their work, some billing strictly paralegal non-LLP work as paralegal. So they're like bouncing back and forth between rates. That's not what this firm does. And that is a little easier for us. I haven't really talked to anybody about the bouncing back and forth. I was a proponent of the bouncing back and forth, but I'm glad that we didn't go that direction, honestly. It ends up being a lot easier. And I still think at the end of the day, saves the client on money, like rather than we have a minimum of a 0.2 on things. So rather than a paralegal 0.2 plus an attorney 0.2, it could just be an LLP 0.2 if it's like a 1-page, 2-page document kind of thing. So I do think it's changing the billing culture a little bit.
Interesting. Other thoughts?
Yeah, we didn't do a bounce back at my firm either. I actually just kept my rate for my LLP work as my paralegal rate because it was actually, on the higher end of paralegal rates. And so I wanted to kind of balance it, but I don't actually do any paralegal work at this point in my firm. So it's all being billed at LLP rates. I would say that one thing I've talked about before in other conversations with people is that my concern with the LLP program and the billing in general is that, firms are trying to find a way to integrate LLPs into their firms, right? And figure out how these billable rates can, be assigned to these LLPs. I think that the purpose of this program was to provide clients and the general public with an affordable access to justice. It's an initiative. And so if firms are to integrate these LLPs and then just start charging them at rates that start to mirror associate attorney rates, because the LLPs are worth it, right? These are practitioners who have been in family law. My associates at my firm have been in family law for about 6 months versus my 11 years. So my experience is valuable. But I think at a certain point, when you set these rates too high and you start treating LLPs as associates, you're essentially boxing out, pricing out the public from the services that we're supposed to be offering at a reasonable rate and retainer. So I think the balance will really come from what is the expertise that this LLP can provide, but how do we also make sure that the public is getting a service from these LLPs that they otherwise couldn't get because of attorney billing rates.
I'm curious, Ashley and Susan, as you're going out on your own, how are you thinking about pricing? I mean, it's one thing when you're a part of a firm and you have to justify a salary, and you've got paralegal rates versus associate rates versus partner rates and all of that. But as you're thinking about pricing in your own entity, how does that change the analysis for you?
It changed my analysis completely. I think, if you're on a track as an LLP that looks like an associate where there's, maybe a percentage of your billing that you're receiving or something like that, that's something you have to consider when you're pricing your work for the public. But on going out on my own, I'm actually planning to price myself low, about the same as what I'm charging now, which is less than $200 an hour for my clients and doing everything on a sliding scale. So my goal in going out on my own is to sort of step away from this, kind of idea of billing hours and billable rates, and just be able to offer clients services based on what they can actually afford.
Mhm.
So to be able to offer sliding scale services, low bono services to clients, I'll be less sort of conscious, I think, about the bottom line than I would be if I was in a larger firm where that's kind of more of an important factor.
Sure.
Yeah, very, very similar, I think, philosophy, it sounds like, to Ashley, of the overhead, like the setup I'm doing, thinking through the business side of it, the overhead, I had thinking through all the ways of keeping that as low as possible. I'm going to be 100% remote to start. And so that takes off a huge expense. And if it's just me, payroll's not on there, so thinking through all those business things, that allows for more room and lower rates. I'm also looking at doing more of a flat fee type of thing. I think I hope that in general, that's where the legal field kind of heads towards. Because something I hate is when clients are like, well, I didn't want to call you about that because it cost me money. Well, then often it costs them more money for me to unravel whatever it is that they did. Or if I'm having to chase you down for documents, that's costing me more money. And neither of us is happy about that. And so taking away some of that pressure, making it very transparent to clients, having to track every minute of my day practically is just, as a neurospicy babe, that can be burdensome mentally. And so getting rid of that, I think, will set me up for success better and set clients up for success. I also want to do sliding scale. I mean, it's in other fields, and one of the things that drew me to the LLP program was giving access, filling the gap of giving access to folks who didn't have maybe that legal expert, that legal guidance before. So maybe part of the solution, if you will.
Absolutely. Veronica, Hannah, do you want to share anything about pricing before we move on?
Well, I'm with the small firm, so it's just me and my attorney. And so we offer a bunch of different packages too, so everybody can afford it, or, ask for the services they want, because a lot of the times people are like, well, I don't know if I can continue to pay bills every 2 weeks or every month or whatever. I want to know how much this is going to cost me altogether. So we do offer some flat fee packages, which is great, because then they get services that they need, and then if they want to come back for more services, they can do that. So we're trying to price it where we can reach a bunch of different types of clients with different types of income. So it's easier for them to hire us instead of the unknown, where I have to have this huge retainer, and then I don't know how much I'm going to have to pay every other month or every week or whatever. So we're trying to do that as well. And with the smaller firms, I believe it's a little bit easier to price lower. We don't have as much overhead, though there is overhead for sure. But we're trying to do that. And I found too that I think the average prices between LLPs that I've heard are like $185 to $250 an hour. So I think that's like what the range is.
Yeah, I took a poll around the Q3 of last year, as the first cohort of LLPs really started getting their feet wet with our license. And I think the Denver Metro average LLP rate is sitting at $225. And I think, being smaller operations, as we all are or are preparing to be, clearly the access to justice means a little bit more. We have this need to provide our services that larger firms just are not utilizing to their best abilities. You know, they're trying to use LLPs as lower rate associates, and that's wonderful and great, but that wasn't the purpose of our program. And the people who are going out on their own, I mean, Ashley and I have had conversations about this. We're like, what are we supposed to do here? Like, we want to help all of these people, but these firms are not, they're not grasping it. And so, yeah, utilizing and doing that access to justice is important to so many of us. And going out on our own is one of the only ways that we have figured out how to do it. Set our own rules, you know, break the barriers, shatter corporate ceilings, you know, all of the good things.
Fight the power. I love it. But that sort of sets up though the another question from the audience, which is that there are still firms that are resistant to LLPs and are making incorrect statements that LLP similar programs in other states are failing. So how can we advocate for ourselves and to get our firms to get the true information, especially with how the program is helping in Colorado?
I remember one of the what was she, triple LT from Washington at the LLP practicum the day after we were sworn in. So Washington did sundown their program. And her recommendation was like, track your stats, because in anything that we do, we have to provide evidence. So I think that, I know like I'm doing that. I think some other firms are doing that too, if the time comes, we prove up the point. I think us getting out there and doing things like this of educating our colleagues. And we have a program here that a few local, they're not even legal practitioners, but they're kind of tangentially related to family law. They host Second Saturdays, which is like a pro bono clinic. They're bringing in LLP. So I think, not to get woo woo, but that's me. I think connecting as communities and getting the word out with each other and making those relationships and referring to each other and things like that, I think will help with that too. Of if we're louder than the naysayers, then hopefully that's what people hear.
I agree. And the judiciary, I mean, it's pretty clear from my interactions with, judges and magistrates and family court facilitators, how much of an impact LLPs are having. They're excited, as Veronica said, to see us on these cases. I mean, watching an ISC, when you've prepared and attended it with all the right notes, the family court facilitators just, excited to see us moving these cases forward much more efficiently. And I think that is a benefit that we provide. And the firms that are resistant, I mean, there will always be people who are resistant to thinking that we're coming in and stealing clients from them and these sorts of things. That's just not at all what the LLP program is doing. What it's really doing is providing access to justice for people who otherwise would not have had an attorney at all. I mean, you can hear Judge Arkin talk about this quite often, but the fact that the majority of family law litigants in Colorado are pro se. I mean, they either can't afford an attorney or they're just priced out of MBL, or they're afraid of hiring an attorney for various reasons. One, because sometimes that appears to, inflate the conflict in a case, or it raises, the fees in a case. So we're here just as an alternative to, these people that really wouldn't have any legal assistance otherwise. So these firms that are resistant, I think eventually will see what impact we're making in the community by us getting involved, like Susan said, getting involved in the bar and getting involved in the family law section and, participating in this process. I was I had the opportunity actually to draft the LLP chapter of the bench bar book, which will be coming out this year. And that was quite an honor. And I think that will be very helpful as well for people to really dig into that and to see what we can do. So I think those firms will eventually get on board with us.
Great. I'm going to move us on just because we are running out of time and have some other great questions to get to. So next question is, I teach general paralegal ethics through a paralegal program. If you were speaking to a paralegal/paralegal student, how would you explain the difference in your ethical obligations, figuring out a solution or answer to ethical questions, especially if you are a solo LLP?
That's a big one. As a paralegal, you kind of operate under this, you're not licensed, so don't say anything. Or you get explicit instruction from your attorney to say the words, my attorney says to tell you. And because you certainly don't want to be anywhere near unauthorized practice of law. Whereas LLPs, we have our ethical rules. However, we don't have any, we haven't had any, like additional comments or decisions made. So we're just kind of, it's still so new. We haven't really, at least that I know of, no one's ethical actions have been up for question yet. So yeah, we're no longer operating under UPL. And like Judge Arkin says, if it doesn't say you can't do it, then do it. And then there's people on the other side of the risk adverse spectrum, and it says it doesn't say you can do it, so don't do it. Yeah, I think it's just going to be a while before we get additional comments or decisions on ethical rules, but we are licensed, so we have a completely different set of rules than paralegals because we are licensed practitioners.
I think it's also like know your boundaries too. Like especially when you're wanting to help someone like what we're doing. You my cat's joining the conversation. She's welcome for a nap. So you want to be the yes person, you want to be the people pleaser. Don't let that take over your boundaries either of be confident in yourself in that too. And I think one of the things I hear from the naysayers is kind of this attitude that I faced my whole career, that paralegals are just wanting to be attorneys without doing like all the steps. Same thing for kind of LLPs. And I'm like, no. But I think the paralegal requirement, the experience requirement, gives us a good starting point of like what Hannah was describing before. It was just this umbrella. It was a pretty bright line. Don't cross it. And I think if that's our foundation, everyone I've talked to is more conscientious of like, I want to make sure I know where the new line is and not wanting to cross that. And so I think if we're all coming in with that mindset, we have that baseline already of don't go too far.
Other thoughts? Okay. So the next question from our audience is, I'm curious if you have sought or received an award of attorney fees in a DR case as LLPs, where the court has to do a lodestar analysis, if you are permitted to seek attorney fees under the licensure, and what was that experience like?
I actually just went to court last week with my attorney, or no, this week actually, it's Tuesday. And we did seek an award of attorneys and licensed legal paraprofessional fees. Unfortunately, it was not a rule from the bench sort of scenario. So I will actually not be at the firm when we get the results of that. But so I don't know what they're going to do with that. But the rules regarding attorneys fees haven't updated so that licensed legal paraprofessionals are called out in those rules. So we can seek attorney's fees, and it actually specifically states attorney's fees or licensed legal paraprofessional fees. So yes, we can still make that same request under the same rules that attorneys do with attorney fees. And I guess we'll see what the outcome of that is, but it will still, I imagine, also be subject to the same reasonableness standards as an attorney.
Anybody else have?
I want to piggyback on that. So I haven't had an award of attorney's fees yet, but like I said, I'm very active in the LLP community, and I know one LLP who went to court, requested attorney's fees because of a big issue. I don't know the exact details of that issue, but she was awarded attorney fees. I think she got like over $3,000 in attorney's fees based on the actions of the opposing party and not doing what they're supposed to do. So yes, it's happening. We are getting attorney's fees when it's appropriate, or LLP fees, I should say.
Good. Well, I mean, obviously this could have been a 2-hour conversation because the audience was so engaged. We really didn't get through our agenda, but in our last few minutes here, I want to ask, what can we as an entire legal community, legal employers, lawyers, LLPs, what can we be doing to help educate the public about LLP services, what they are, what you all do, how to engage with you? I think the public education component of this is so critical, and it's going to come to us to do that. So how can we do that? How can we do that better?
You know, right before I hopped into this Zoom, I was doing the MVL family advice and family law and advice clinic. And one of the MVL clients was like, I'm just looking for somebody to help because I don't know what I'm doing. And I was like, well, there's LLPs. We don't have a master list quite yet, but Veronica is desperately working on it. I know the Bar Association is working on getting that published on the website, so hopefully they can track down representation. That is a big goal of ours, is to publish that list. And I referred this client out, so I am always sending people to other LLPs before I send them to other law firms. And maybe that's my bias because everyone is like, all of the LLPs we're in this together, so if it's not like a expert related issue or like a significantly complicated something that's not within our scope, I am absolutely sending people to LLP firms. Getting the word out there. If there was a magic solution, we're trying. Social media goes so far. A couple of us have TikToks because, everyone is on TikTok for now. And yeah, getting the word out there is kind of our biggest hurdle. So I hope to hear someone else's answer because
It's word of mouth. I do a lot of volunteer just so that, like Hannah was talking about, through MVL or the FLAG program or the Family Law Court Advice program or whatever volunteer things that I can do that are not just within family law as well, just to get the word out, word of mouth. I post on social media. We have it on LinkedIn. Maybe we can do some news stories or whatever, but I think that word of mouth is going to get it around really quickly. I do have people calling and saying, oh, I heard about that. I heard that paralegals are being licensed now. They've done some news stories on us. So just like, promoting us or, just getting the word out by word of mouth is what's going to make it big.
And just knowing what it is, right? I think, when we first got licensed, there was some sort of misinformation that was going around, and it was not at anyone's fault. It was just simply that there wasn't enough education about what we do. But I think it really helps when the legal community is really aware of what it is that we do, what our scope is, what kinds of cases we can work on. If you don't know the answers to those questions and you want to help promote us, then reach out to us and ask us, what do you guys do? What kinds of cases do you not do? And I think that helps when you're trying to funnel clients to these LLPs. I get referrals from other attorneys. I've gotten referrals from, real estate experts, financial advisors. When they know that they're sending a client to me that actually fits my scope, then that's a good match with the client. And so I think we can continue to help educate the legal community about what services we offer, the fact that we can do unbundled work, the fact that we don't need attorney supervision, that we can have our own firms, that we can have our own paralegals. And so I think that is part of this process. And that's why this has been a great conversation. And I appreciate it very much, because getting this word out to the community will be very helpful for the success of this program.
I second everything everybody said. Veronica kind of hit on something of, if you're volunteering or you're involved in just other things that aren't even may not be exactly legal related. Like I'm a part of the junior league here. That's not like a legal field thing at all. Talking to those folks, like, I think word of mouth is huge.
All right. Well, we're going to have to leave it there for today. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I think this was an excellent conversation, and clearly we need to have a follow-up so that we can get to some of the topics we weren't able to get to today. I have put the CLE number in the chat. If you can't see it, it is 854-347-854-347. And so you can grab your CLE credit for today. I hope this was helpful for our attendees. I know these folks will be available to answer your questions, take your referrals, and help you further engage with the LLP community and cohort if you're not already doing so. So thank you so much. Please join us next month. We will be back for a great conversation on law and spirituality and the intersection between those two. So join us next month. You can find all of that information on our website at coloradomentoring.org. Veronica, Ashley, Susan, Hannah, thank you so much for being here. And have a great rest of your day, everyone. This recording will be available on our social media pages later this afternoon. Take care of one another, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.